Welcome back to the channel. My name's Chad. I'm your tAilor. Today we're going to be making a skirt. Recently I realized that 43% of my audience is female, so welcome to the channel, ladies. This one's for you. I do make a lot of like women's clothes. I'd say like a significant amount, but I don't post a lot of it on my channel. So that changes today. Today we're making a skirt, and specifically pleated wrap skirt. That's the design I've been commissioned to make today. So that's what we're gonna be making. I've made 2 alterations to this pattern that's gonna make it a little bit easier to sew. So get your sewing machine, get some fabric, and let's get to sewing. We'll be starting this project off like we start all of our projects with going over our materials. For this one, you only need 2 materials. One is your fabric. Here I have 1.5 yards of denim fabric. So here I just have 1.5 yards. This should be enough for the skirt and the waistband. You'll also need 2 buttons, and these can be any shape, any color that you like. Just preferably they're gonna be flat and they're gonna match the color of the skirt. But of course, it's your skirt, your prerogative. Do whatever you want. Now that we have our materials down, let's go over our measurements. And for this one, we only actually need 3 measurements. So this can be pretty easy and simple. These ones you can do on yourself. The first one we'll need is waist measurement. So you're gonna be coming over and measure your waist. For my mannequin here, I have a 28 waist. We also need our hips are 40. We also need our length for the skirt. For this one, the length I'm making is 15 inches. So it's gonna be a little bit like of a mini skirt, but you can make it as short or as long. You know, again, your prerogative, do whatever you want. You can make it as short or as long as you want. All right, the first thing we're gonna be doing is we're going to be taking our entire waist measurement and making a little rectangle. This will be the length of our skirt, which in my case is 15 inches, plus 2-inch seam allowance, so 2 inches, 17 inches. And this is our waist length. So the waist length that we want to do for the skirt is going to be your waist plus 1/4 of your waist, because we want it to overlap. So that's why I add 1/4 of the waist. The waist that we have for our skirt is 28 inches plus 1/4. 1/4 of 28 is 7 inches. 28 plus 7 is 35 inches. So we have our final measurements, but we also have to add pleats. Let's not forget adding pleats. So adding pleats, we're going to make our pleats 2 inches apart and also 2 inches long. All right, let's determine our final measurements here. First up, we have the length of the skirt, which is 17 inches, if you remember. So that is just the length, which is 15 inches plus the seam allowance, which is 2 inches, 17 inches total. And we also have the width of the skirt, which is 35 inches. And if you remember, that is the waist plus 1/4 of the waist. And the reason why we add 1/4 of the waist is because the skirt has to wrap around. But you may have noticed something, is that this skirt is pleated. So when it's pleated, we do have to add a little bit more material. So this 35 inches is going to grow actually. But how do we determine how much material we need to add? So I'm gonna go break down pleats for you guys so you can sort of see where the number I'm going to come up with. Here we have a nice new fresh sheet of paper. And let's just pretend that this fresh sheet of paper is our fabric. And I'm just gonna pleat it so you guys can kind of see what that would look like. I'm overlapping the paper here to make some pleats. And it doesn't have to be perfect. This is just for demonstration purposes. So you can see this is the paper and these are the pleats. So this is like the skirt and we have some pleats here. So how do we determine the length of the fabric? If we spread it out, you can see that it's a lot longer, but when we pleat it, you can see that it's a lot smaller. So we want the smaller length to be our 35 inches, and this longer length is gonna be 35 inches plus however much more the pleats add. For this skirt, we're adding 1-inch pleats, and they're going to be 1 inch away from each other. So if I add some measurements on here, so this is the start of the skirt, this is 1 inch, and then this is also 1 inch. This pleat here is 1 inch, and we also have 1 inch here. But when we spread it out, you can see that this 1 inch is a little bit longer. So this is 1 pleat here. It's the same on both sides. This is also going to be 1 inch, and the same with this other side of the pleat here, 1 inch. These two together, 1 plus 1, that's 2 inches. Same with this pleat here, 2 inches. Now we have our pleats, you know, they're 2 inches long. And when we fold them up, it's a smaller length for the waist. This is a smaller length, open it up, it's a larger length. So how do we determine the final length? If you notice that for each 1 inch space, there's going to be an extra 2 inches that have to accommodate for the pleat. So 1 inch, the start of the skirt, 2 inches for the pleat, another 1 inch for the skirt, 2 inches for the pleat, another 1 inch. So this can kind of help us figure out what the formula is going to be. So if the total waist of our garment is going to equal the waist that we have plus the waist minus 1, and the reason why we get minus 1 is because there's no pleat in the beginning, so we're gonna have to subtract 1 from the length of the waist. Minus 1, that's where you get that minus 1, and we multiply this by 2 because if we remember there's 2 1-inch segments here, so that's where we're gonna multiply this by 2. So our waist, our total waist equals the waist that we have, which in this case is 35 inches, plus 35 minus 1, which is 34, times 2. So 34 times 2 plus 35 is at 103. So it's going to be the final length of fabric that we're going to have to use for our waist. If your waist is a little bit larger, so 35, if it's 40, plug in 40. If it's smaller, if it's like 28, plug in 28. It should work entirely the same with the 1-inch pleats, which in this case is going to be 103 inches by 17 inches. And this is going to be the final rectangle that we are going to cut from our fabric. All right, we're back from the cutting room floor. Now let's just verify some of our measurements. The length of the skirt, 17 inches, perfect. And the width is 103. So our entire length of fabric, our entire roll wasn't 103 inches because that's ridiculously long. So what I did, you can see here, there is a seam where I stitched 2 pieces of fabric together. And if you come into this situation, which most likely you will, just make sure you compensate by adding seam allowance. So I added an extra inch to the 103. I added 104 inches, and I just stitched the 2 pieces of fabric together with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and I also added, I overlocked the end so that they weren't fray. What we're going to be doing next is adding the pleats. So this is the fun part. So we're going to be making marks on the skirt that are 1 inch apart, and we're going to be doing this for the entire length of the skirt. So it's going to take some time. So we've got like a podcast, or just mark the skirt. I'm taking my tailor's chalk. If you guys don't have a tailor's chalk, what you can do is you can take your scissors or your snips here, slowly cut about 1/8 of an inch, or a little less, a little more. You just want to make sure that you get the notch of the fabric. I'm just going to be doing this through the entire 103 length of the skirt. All right, we're back from adding these chalk marks to the skirt, and let's take a look at them. You can kind of see that they're 1 inch apart. So really nice and simple to do. Our next step is we're going to grab our pins, and we're going to be adding the pleats to the skirt. This is a pretty simple but also tedious process like the last one. We're going to be grabbing our first mark and our third mark and putting them together face to face, just like that, and then adding a pin to connect them. That's 1 pleat done. After you add a pin there, you have our first, second, third. Connect those 2 together, face to face, and once those are connected, add a pin to secure it. And we pretty much keep doing that over and over and over the entire length of the skirt. So that's 1 pin, first, skip second, third. Connect your first and your third together. Make sure the marks line up. Add a pin. Boom. One more time. First, second, third. First and third. Connected. That's it. We're done. That's another one. We keep doing that for the entire length of the skirt. Again, a little tedious, but not too complicated. If you just take a look, you can kind of see what it looks like. Nice and beautiful. So you can see our pleats, they're on the back side of the skirt. And our next step after pinning these things is taking it to the sewing machine and actually stitching down where we pinned. So each pin here, we're going to stitch perpendicular to the edge of the fabric, so parallel with the pin, right above the pin, 2 inches down. So from the edge here all the way down 2 inches, and we're gonna do that for each and every single pit. So this is also another thing that's gonna take some time. All right, we're back from the sewing machine, and this is what the pleats look like. Look like on the front, and this is what they look like on the back. What we're going to be doing is we're going to shift them towards one side. So right now I'm shifting them to the right, on the right, like that. Keep going, like that all the way to the left. You can even pin it if it makes it a little easier. And our next step is to make one long stitch over the entire width of the skirt, just to make sure that the pleats lay nice and flat. So I'm going to take this to the sewing machine. I'll be right back. And we're back from the sewing machine. This is what the skirt looks like. You can see the pleats are stitched down. That's what the back side looks like. One thing I really like about this denim is that it's very nice and soft too. It's a really nice looking denim. Our next thing that we have to do for a skirt is iron the pleats. This is very important because we want the pleats of our skirt to look really nice. So I'm going to take this to the ironing board and make sure that I iron down all my pleats. We finished most of the skirt. All we have to do next is the waistband, and you can do a little bit of a test fit on the skirt. Skirt looks pretty good so far. She looks a lot better than I thought, actually. And when you have the skirt on like this would be a great time to sort of adjust the hem. I did add a 2-inch hem, so that's half for the top, half-inch for the top, and 1.5 for the bottom. It's actually pretty good, and we can move on to our next step. Next thing we have to do is attach the waistband. And we already know the waistband is supposed to be, in our case, what did I say, 35 inches? But it's always good to double check and then measure the total length of the skirt, and then you're gonna make the waistband that length. One thing I did forget to mention is that the edges of the skirt, you just want to do a double fold on those for 1/2 inch and then just stitch them down so you can get, it won't be a raw edge on the outside. So with the waist measured, I'm going to be adding a waistband, and my waistband is going to be the length of the skirt, which in this case 35 inches, plus the width of the waistband is going to be a regular 1.5 inch waistband that you see on like pants and jeans. So you're gonna have to cut an extra 4 inches. So our waistband is going to be the length of your, or I guess the width of your waist by 4 inches. I'm gonna cut that out of some fabric. All right, so this is what our waistband looks like. This one is 37 inches actually, because I had 2 inches for seam allowance by 4 inches. So when I fold it in half, 1/2 inch for the seam allowance, and then the other 1.5 inches for the waistband. So what we're going to be doing is attaching this to the waist of the skirt. Coming right back, I stitched the waistband on. Now what we're going to be doing is folding it over, measuring 1.5 inches, and then folding the inside again so it matches up with the inside of our skirt, and doing a top stitch just to make sure that the waistband is nice and secure. The waistband is all done. Look how nice that looks. It looks so nice. So we're almost done. As you can see, you know, the skirt's looking nice, and if you're at this point, you can kind of just adjust the fit. What's a good thing about like these wrap skirts is that they're really easy to just fit if you want to make them smaller or longer. But I obviously can't hold the skirt like this the entire time. You know, you gotta have some way to close it. How we do that is we're going to be using some buttons. What you want to do is you want to put it on your body and make sure it's relatively snug, not too tight. You know, make sure you breathe and stuff. And I'm just going to mark where the first part of the skirt starts there, and then mark where it ends. So there, and also there. One there and one here. And we're going to be placing some buttonholes and buttons on the skirt so that we can secure it. We're going to be placing one buttonhole here and also one buttonhole here. Back from the sewing machine, I added my 2 buttonholes. One is here, you can see that, and one is here. And we're going to be sewing on the buttons. One is going to be facing inside, so line it up with the buttonhole and then stitch it on here. And same thing with the second button on the side here, line it up and sew it on here. So when you're stitching 2 buttons, 2 buttonholes, 2 buttons. Voila, the skirt is now finished. You can see this little button on the side. I just picked a black button, medium gloss, nothing too crazy. And the stitch on the interior button right there. This skirt is like 99% finished. The only thing we have to do is do the hem, but I'm just gonna do it off camera. You know, I'm just gonna do a double fold on it, seam allowance of, what was it, 1.5 inches. You guys pretty much know how to do a hem. Fold it once and fold it twice, stitch, that's it. And then after that, the skirt's done. The skirt is done and we are back from the sewing machine. Ooh, I'm looking kind of, well, greasy. What time is it? Oh, it's midnight. I gotta get to bed. That's probably why. That makes sense. Anyway, the skirt's finished and I'm really happy with how it turned out. If I do have an on body, I don't think I will, but I don't think I'll get that footage. But if I do get an on body, I'll post it here so you guys can see what it looks like. But even without the on body, you can kind of see it on the dress form. It looks pretty great. You can kind of see what it looks like. This is a very simple sort of design to make for the skirt. There are a couple of, techniques here that will translate to other projects, such as making the waistband. This is pretty straightforward for like making pants or skirts or anything like that. Pleats are also very good skill to learn. So it's a really nice skirt. There's a lot of customization you can have with this as well too. It's very adjustable. So, you know, if you like lose weight, gain weight, whatever, or make a mistake with the measurements and you want to compensate by correcting, you can just move these buttons around. Really easy to shift buttons. You won't have to move the buttonholes or anything like that. So really easy to shift. You can also add like a button or like a pin or like a snap or something here to stop the dress from like blowing over. I didn't do that because yeah, it's not not required. I'm really proud of the skirt. Looks really dope. That's the back. That's the front. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If you do end up making it, of course, you know, as I said before, I really want to see it. So tag me or whatever. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I will see you in the next video. Bye.